Miss Riley Summers stood at the front of her classroom with trembling hands, not from fear, but from restraint. She had always believed in nonviolence, in rising above, in showing the strength of compassion and intellect. But that morning, she wiped blood from the corner of her lip with the sleeve of her blouse, something deep inside her shifted. It had been a slap, not just a physical one, but one that echoed every ounce of humiliation, disrespect, and injustice she had swallowed since the start of her career. And worse, it had come from a student. The silence that followed was unbearable. No one moved, no one breathed. The other students in the room sat frozen, wide-eyed. They hadn't expected it to go that far. Neither had she. Riley Summers had come to Parkdale High School with the quiet fire of someone who'd been through worse and survived. At 31, she had left behind a successful corporate job and moved across the country to follow her dream of teaching literature to high schoolers, sharing poetry, stories, and the beauty of language with minds still forming. She knew it wouldn't be easy. She didn't expect hugs and roses, but she never imagined the cruelty she would face. Her first year had been filled with challenges. Many of her students were struggling, economically, emotionally, and academically. The school was underfunded and overcrowded. The administration turned a blind eye to bullying, favoring athletes and influencers over fairness and discipline. And among all of them, one group reigned supreme. They called themselves the Circle, 5 seniors who seemed untouchable. Their leader, Brandon Reyes, was the son of the school board president. Charismatic, handsome, and dangerous in the way only someone who had never heard no could be. Alongside him were Lyle, Theo, Caleb, and Jax, all of them physically imposing and emotionally immature. From the first day, they had targeted Riley. It began with mocking her voice, then her clothes, then her car. They'd sneak obscene notes onto her desk, send fake emails from her account, and once, even recorded her in the staff bathroom and played the audio over the classroom speakers. She reported it. Once, twice, a dozen times. But nothing happened. The principal, Mr. Dyer, gave her sympathetic looks but shrugged his shoulders. "Boys will be boys," he said once, laughing uncomfortably. "Just don't let them get under your skin." Under her skin. They had torn into her spirit, piece by piece. Still, she kept going. For the few students who genuinely cared. For the girl in the back row who read Shakespeare under her desk. For the boy who stuttered but loved poetry. For the ones like her, who had no voice growing up. And then came the day everything unraveled. It was supposed to be a normal Thursday. Rain tapped lightly against the windows, and the classroom smelled of damp paper and chalk. Riley was discussing To Kill a Mockingbird, emphasizing empathy and moral courage, when Brandon raised his hand with a smirk. "Yes, Brandon?" she asked cautiously. "I just don't get why this Atticus guy didn't just slap the judge and take what he wanted. Might have been faster." The class laughed, but Riley didn't. "Because violence isn't power," she said softly. "Real strength is staying calm when others choose cruelty. It takes more courage to walk away." Brandon's smirk faded. He didn't like being corrected, especially by a woman. Especially not in front of his audience. "Yeah?" He stood up. "Let's test that theory." And before she could move, he walked to her desk, and in one sudden, horrifying moment, slapped her across the face. Gasps filled the room. A girl screamed. A boy dropped his pencil. Riley staggered back, holding her cheek, stunned not by the pain, but by the sheer audacity. The room stood still. Even Brandon looked surprised at what he'd done. And that's when something inside her, something buried and long suppressed, rose to the surface. She looked at him slowly, her eyes, no longer soft but steel, her voice calm, deliberate. "Brandon," she said, "I'm going to give you one chance to step back. You don't want to know who I really am." He laughed nervously. "Or what? You'll cry?" She exhaled deeply. Her mind flashed back, years ago, to the dimly lit dojo where she trained under her uncle in Okinawa, to the grueling hours, the bruises, the breath control, the discipline, to the black belt ceremony where she vowed to use her skills only for self-defense. She took off her cardigan, folding it neatly and placing it on her desk. The students watched in stunned silence. Brandon lunged again, trying to grab her wrist. But this time she moved. Not out of anger, but precision. She stepped aside, seized his arm, twisted it behind his back, and in a single fluid motion, brought him to the ground. He yelped in pain. "What the?" Lyle and Theo rushed toward her. Wrong move. With controlled strikes, she blocked one, swept the other off his feet, and turned to face the rest. She didn't attack. She didn't escalate. She simply stood, centered, unmoved. "Enough," she said firmly. "I will not be a victim in my own classroom." No one else moved. Students stood, jaws dropped, phones were out. Someone had been recording the whole thing. Riley picked up her cardigan, put it back on, and helped Brandon to his feet. "Violence is a choice. You made yours. Now face the consequences." By the end of the day, the video had gone viral. Parents flooded the school with calls. The school board had no choice but to act. Brandon and his gang were expelled. Principal Dyer was placed on leave pending investigation. And for the first time, the school community took notice of the toxic environment they had allowed to grow. Riley, meanwhile, was called to the superintendent's office. She expected discipline. She expected judgment. Instead, she received applause. "You acted in self-defense," they said, "and showed restraint most people couldn't. You have our respect and our support." Overnight, Riley became more than a teacher. She became a symbol. Students came forward with their own stories. Victims of bullying found their voices. Teachers who had stayed silent began to speak out. 1 week later, she was asked to lead a new school-wide initiative, Strength with Grace, a program combining self-defense, emotional awareness, and empowerment. But Riley didn't let it go to her head. She still taught literature with the same love, the same passion. She still read Shakespeare under trees and quoted Maya Angelou in the halls. The difference? Now they listened. Brandon. Months later, he sent a letter, a sincere apology. Therapy had helped him face his father's abuse, his own insecurities. He wrote, "You hitting the mat that day did more for me than all the years of privilege ever did." Riley read the letter with tears in her eyes, not out of pride, but relief. Change was happening. Moral of the story: real power doesn't shout, it doesn't hurt, it doesn't humiliate. Real power stands with dignity, defends when necessary, and uplifts others even when knocked down. Never assume a gentle soul is weak. Sometimes they carry the fiercest strength of all, one that chooses peace, until peace is no longer an option.